most of the serious projections for 2030 envision the Middle East producing 51 million barrels a day. We know that Iran peaked at 6 million barrels a day back in 1978, struggles to stay between 3 and 3.5 million barrels a day. Kuwait struggles to keep their 2.5 million barrels a day intact. Maybe we can add 500,000 barrels a day. Maybe the UAE can add 500,000 barrels a day. So to get there, you would have to have Saudi Arabia be producing between 20 and 25 million or even 30 million barrels a day. Those days are long gone. You know, up to 15 million barrels a day is now their sort of new magic number for 50, 75, even 100 years. There are other powerful voices within Saudi Arabia that are clearly sending the message out. 12 million barrels a day, yeah, that's probably okay, but we really shouldn't even think about producing any more than that, ever. They had an intense exploration effort for the last 35 years, and with the exception of one field, the Hatta field, that's the only significant exploration success they had from 1967 through 2005. If Saudi Arabia has now exceeded their sustainable peak supply, then I would argue with some clarity that the world has now exceeded sustainable peak supply. When you reach the peak, you're at the top of the mountain. Sometimes down the other side is very, very gradual slide, and other times down the other side is fairly stiff.
What really matters, and matters enormously, is the view that comes into sight on the other side of this peak when we see this long, relentless, remorseless decline heading off into the valley. The point is that the whole world has got used to this growing side of the mountain range, has to face the opposite side. We have moved now to the point in which virtually everyone accepts that there is a peak.
M. King Hubbard had predicted that worldwide it should be occurring about the turn of the century. That slipped a little because of the Arab oil embargo and the oil price spike hikes and the worldwide recession. It reduced the demand for oil quite significantly, and it's now pushed peak oil off till many people believe about now.
We are coming to the end of the first half of the age of oil. During this 150 years, we have seen the growth of everything, of industry, transport, trade, agriculture. We've seen an explosion of the number of people. All of this was made possible by the cheap, abundant supply of oil-based energy.
Demand is on the march, and supply is flattening out.
You will have to supply, if you want to meet the demand, from the current level of 80 million barrels a day to 120 million barrels a day in year 2030. But in order to meet that profile, you would have to add new oil in the amount of 200 million barrels a day, because a lot of that new oil will have to go to compensate for depletion of existing wells.
In the early 70s, over half the globe essentially didn't use any oil. The only serious oil consumers were Europe, not an awful lot in Japan, the United States, Canada, and the former Soviet Union. Africa didn't use any oil of any volume. Middle East didn't use any oil. None of Asia used any oil other than Japan. Today, Papua New Guinea hardly uses any oil. There's probably 2 or 3 islands in the South Pacific that don't use any oil. Everybody else is hooked on trying to create a society that looks like us.
The demand for energy is rising faster than was predicted even 5 years ago. So people all around the world can see the way the developed countries of the world live and how good a life the people have in those areas. So they want to emulate us. They want to be able to drive cars. They want to live in nice houses. They want to have air conditioning and refrigeration. And why shouldn't they?
Demand for energy will only increase as India's standard of living rises, its economy becomes even more diverse and dynamic, and it continues to narrow the gap with more developed nations.
China is not about to have a hard landing. They're exponentially expanding their need for energy. And they're just getting started.
Most urban Chinese believe that they will own a car within 5 years, the fastest growing automobile market on earth. Something like 1/3 of them already have driver's licenses. And so the demand for oil and for gasoline in China is really going to take off.
Last year, China increased their importation of oil by 25%. They're now the #2 importer in the world. They increased their use of oil. I read a figure, 14.7%. I don't know how you get that precise. But that's very consistent with an economy that's growing at 10% a year. And by the way, a 10% growth rate doubles in 7 years, 4 times bigger in 14 years, and they're requiring more and more energy.
China and India are kind of getting to the party when the glass is literally half empty at this point. So they're going to have to fight with the rest of us to get what's left.
Well, the Hummer, I believe, is more of a status symbol where, you know, look at me, I can afford a Hummer, I'm driving the best. It's going to get somewhere around 10 miles per gallon constant on the road. That's either highway or city driving. 6.0 liter, 325 horsepower with 380 foot-pounds of torque.
Well, we are a role model whether we like it or not. We use 25% of the world's oil. We're only 1 person in 22. We have only 2% of the known reserves of oil.